The cabin went silent. A woman in full military uniform stood in the aisle of the airplane, her eyes steady, her jaw tight. Every passenger watched as she turned to the man who had just denied her the first-class seat she was assigned. He wore a flight attendant uniform and had a cold, clipped voice. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "This seat isn't available to you." The woman didn't argue. She didn't shout. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper, and handed it to him without a word. He took it, skimmed the top line, and froze. His face turned pale. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but no sound came out. The passengers leaned in, sensing something was very wrong. A ripple of whispers swept through the cabin. A child pointed. A woman gasped. The pilot himself stepped out from the cockpit. And then, the soldier did something no one expected. She turned, walked calmly to the intercom at the front of the plane and picked it up. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I'm sorry to interrupt your flight, but I think everyone should hear this." Gasps erupted. People sat up straighter. Phones came out. A few passengers began recording. Even the flight attendants stopped in their tracks. What she said next would not only shake the passengers to their core, but it would start a chain of events that would make headlines around the world. Now let me take you back to how it all began. It started 3 days earlier in a quiet town in Georgia. Sergeant Danielle Rivers, a decorated black soldier in the U.S. Army, had just wrapped up a 6-month deployment overseas. Her return was unannounced. She liked it that way. No grand welcomes, no press, just her and her duffel bag stepping off a military bus onto American soil. Danielle missed home. She missed her grandmother's cornbread, her litty, her sister's silly TikTok dances, and the quiet hum of her small backyard where she used to read her favorite books. War changed people. It changed her. But what hadn't changed was her deep sense of pride in serving her country. She only had one stop to make before flying home, Washington, D.C., for a military award ceremony where she was to be honored for bravery. Not that she cared much about awards. She'd saved lives, real ones. That was enough. Danielle booked her flight back home the night before the ceremony. It had been upgraded courtesy of a fellow soldier who gifted her his first-class ticket as a thank you. "You deserve it more than I do," he'd said. She almost cried at the gesture. At the airport, everything seemed normal. People hustled through security, dragging their bags and sipping coffee. A few folks smiled at Danielle when they saw her uniform. Others didn't look twice. She was used to that. But something odd happened at the check-in counter. When she presented her ticket, the clerk scanned it, paused, then double-checked her screen. "You've been upgraded to first class?" she asked, not hiding her surprise. Danielle nodded. The clerk gave a tight smile and handed the ticket back. "Okay, you're good to go." Danielle tried to brush it off, but something about the tone stuck with her. Still, she kept moving. She had more important things to worry about, like not crying when she saw her little sister at the airport gate back home. Boarding was smooth at first. She walked down the jet bridge, tired but relieved to finally sit in a comfortable seat. She found her spot, seat 2A, right by the window. A man in a blue flight attendant uniform stood nearby, checking tickets. She showed him hers. His face changed instantly. "I'm sorry," he said almost sharply. "This isn't your seat." Danielle blinked. "I believe it is. Here's my ticket." He barely ooked at it. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move to the back. This seat is for first-class passengers only." The way he said "first class" hit her like a slap. She could feel the eyes of the other passengers on her. She could hear someone whispering behind her. A couple in row 3 exchanged glances. Someone laughed softly. And yet, she stayed calm. "This is my seat," she said again, this time more quietly. "I was upgraded." "There's been a mistake," the flight attendant snapped. "You can't sit here." Danielle didn't yell. She didn't raise her voice or throw a fit. Instead, she pulled out the document from her pocket, the one she'd been handed the night before at the ceremony. It wasn't just any document. It was a letter from the Pentagon, signed by the Secretary of Defense. She handed it to him. As he read, his lips moved. His expression shifted from smugness to something darker. Fear, shame, guilt, maybe all three. And then Danielle made her way toward the front of the plane. What she said on that intercom, well, you already know it wasn't ordinary. But before we get to that, you need to know what kind of woman Danielle Rivers really was, because this story isn't just about a seat on a plane. It's about the weight people carry, the things they fight for, the way injustice doesn't always come with raised voices, but sometimes with quiet strength. As Danielle walked to the front, passengers began murmuring. The co-pilot poked his head out. Another flight attendant, this one younger and visibly nervous, asked the man in blue what was going on. He said nothing. Meanwhile, the captain was being alerted. The door to the cockpit opened wider. A phone rang at the gate, and as Danielle stood at the front, one hand gripping the intercom, the other holding the Pentagon letter, she took a deep breath. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, a loud voice cut through the cabin. "Ma'am, step away from the intercom." It was an air marshal. No one had even noticed him board. His voice was stern. His hand hovered near his. "Belt?" Several passengers gasped. One woman clutched her chest. A little boy dropped his juice. Danielle froze, and the plane sat in stunned silence. Danielle didn't move. The intercom trembled slightly in her hand, but her face stayed calm. The air marshal stepped forward slowly, his eyes locked on her, one hand on his belt, just inches away from his holstered weapon. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the intercom and return to your seat." A hush settled over the cabin. The tension was thick, like a thundercloud ready to burst. Danielle didn't flinch. Instead, she slowly held up the document, the official letter from the Pentagon, with both hands so everyone could see. "I have every right to speak," she said, her voice firm, her eyes still on the marshal. "This flight denied me a seat I was assigned because of what I look like, not because of protocol. And the people on this plane deserve to know the truth." The marshal hesitated. The flight attendant in blue, the one who had denied her the seat, looked nervous now. He shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting around the cabin. From behind, a voice called out, "Let her talk." It was a man seated in business class. Then another voice chimed in, "She's a soldier. She earned that seat." Danielle could feel the momentum shifting, but the marshal's stance didn't change. "I understand your frustration," he said slowly. "But this isn't the place for it." Danielle nodded. "You're right. But the place they put me in wasn't right either." The marshal looked at the captain, who had now stepped into the aisle. "We can take a moment," the captain said. "Let her speak." The marshal stepped back. Danielle turned to the intercom again and pressed the button. "My name is Sergeant Danielle Rivers," she began. "I serve in the United States Army. I've just returned from overseas deployment, where I helped lead a rescue mission that saved 12 lives. A ripple of gasps filled the air. "Last night I was honored by the Department of Defense with an award for valor. A fellow soldier gave me his first-class seat as a thank you." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "But when I boarded this flight, a crew member saw me, a black woman in uniform, and told me I didn't belong in that seat." The silence was no longer polite, it was stunned. Danielle's voice never wavered. "I didn't come up here to complain. I came up here to remind us all of what dignity looks like. And it doesn't wear a specific color, it doesn't come with a dress code, and it certainly doesn't belong to just one section of this airplane." Her voice cracked just slightly. "I've fought for this country. I've seen death, I've seen courage, I've also seen hate. But what happened here today, that wasn't just a mistake, that was a choice." She put the intercom down. Some passengers clapped, others sat frozen, ashamed, and the flight attendant who had denied her the seat. He turned and disappeared into the galley. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the captain approached her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice soft, "please take your rightful seat in first class." Danielle looked down at her folded ticket, then walked slowly down the aisle. One by one, people stood to let her pass. A few reached out and touched her arm. A child whispered, "She's a hero." When she reached seat 2A, the man sitting next to it stood up. He saluted her. Danielle's hand went to her forehead, returning the salute without hesitation. She placed her bag in the overhead bin and sat down. But just as she leaned back into the soft leather seat, she noticed something strange. Two men in plain clothes were whispering just outside the cockpit door. One of them handed the other a folder. The younger one nodded, then looked in Danielle's direction. Something didn't feel right. Then the pilot made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a minor technical issue, we'll be returning to the gate for a brief inspection. Please remain seated." Passengers groaned, frustrated. But Danielle's instincts kicked in. This wasn't a technical issue. She watched as the two plain-clothed men exited the cockpit and walked toward her row. One of them was holding handcuffs. Danielle's heart pounded. "Ma'am," the man said calmly, "you need to come with us." "On what grounds?" she asked, her voice sharp. He didn't answer. The second man reached into his jacket and flashed a badge. TSA, not FBI. Danielle stood slowly, her muscles tense, years of training on alert. "What's going on?" someone shouted from behind. "Why are they taking her?" another asked. The air marshal stepped forward again, clearly confused. "She's not under arrest. I never gave that order." "Please step aside," said one of the TSA agents. "We have orders." Danielle looked around. The passengers were standing now, furious. "We all saw what happened," someone yelled. "She didn't do anything wrong." The flight attendant who had denied her the seat was now nowhere to be seen. Danielle turned to the man with the badge. "Am I being detained? You're being escorted for questioning." She didn't resist, but as she stepped into the aisle, her hand brushed against something in her jacket pocket. It was her phone. She pressed the side button twice, starting the recording app she'd pre-installed for emergencies. As the two agents flanked her, Danielle glanced back at the passengers. "Record everything," she said softly, and then they walked her off the plane. Back inside the terminal, people were buzzing. Word had spread. Videos were already being uploaded. Social media had caught fire. But for Danielle Rivers, the real fight was just beginning, because what happened on that plane was only the tip of something much, much darker. And as she was led through a private corridor to a quiet security room, she knew one thing for sure. This wasn't about a seat anymore. This was war. The room was small, cold, and windowless. Danielle sat alone in a metal chair bolted to the floor. A buzzing fluorescent light flickered above her. Her hands rested on the table, unshackled but under sharp watch. There were two cameras in opposite corners of the ceiling. One red light blinked steadily. The other remained dark. She didn't speak. She didn't panic. She waited. She'd been trained for silence. 10 minutes passed before the door clicked open, and the two plainclothes TSA agents re-entered. One carried a manila folder thick with printed pages. The other had a laptop under his arm. Neither looked her in the eye. The older one spoke first. "Sergeant Rivers, we apologize for the inconvenience, but we need to ask you a few questions regarding your behavior aboard Flight 287. Danielle blinked slowly. "My behavior?" He nodded stiffly. "You created a disruption that delayed a commercial flight, causing distress to the crew and passengers." Danielle leaned back in the chair. "You mean I responded to a crew member who refused to honor my ticket because of how I look?" "That's not how we see it," said the younger agent, tapping on his laptop. Danielle tilted her head. "Then how do you see it?" He turned the screen toward her. A paused video showed her at the intercom, speaking to the passengers. Below the video was a title from a social media post. "Black soldier shuts down racist flight attendant. Must watch." The older agent sighed. "This went viral in under 15 minutes. You've got news outlets calling, hashtags trending, politicians tweeting. And our office? Flooded with calls." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "So you pulled me off the plane because I embarrassed your airline?" "We pulled you off because you escalated a situation," the older agent said sharply. Danielle crossed her arms. "By telling the truth?" There was a pause. Then the younger agent shifted in his seat and clicked to another tab. This time it was her military file, lengthy, impressive, and spotless. "You're a decorated soldier," he said, his tone softening. "You've done more for this country than most of us ever will. But things are sensitive right now. Airports, national security, race relations, you understand." Danielle nodded slowly. "I understand better than you think." Just then the door opened again. A tall woman in a black suit walked in, heels clicking against the tile. Her expression was unreadable, her hair pulled into a severe bun. "I'll take it from here," she said coolly. The two agents stood, nodded, and exited without a word. The woman sat across from Danielle and opened a small leather case. "Sergeant Rivers, my name is Agent Monroe. I work with the Department of Homeland Affairs." Danielle straightened. "I wasn't aware this was a Homeland issue." Agent Monroe smiled without warmth. "It wasn't, until about 20 minutes ago." She slid a photo across the table. It showed the flight attendant, the man who denied her the seat, outside an airport security gate. He was speaking to a man with a duffel bag and handing him what appeared to be a printed badge. Danielle leaned in. "That's not protocol," she murmured. "No," Monroe agreed. "It's not. We've flagged the flight attendant. He's not who we thought he was." Danielle's eyes narrowed. "Who is he?" "We don't know yet. But he's gone. Disappeared 5 minutes after you were taken off the plane. Security footage ends right before he exits the terminal. The camera's cut out." Danielle swallowed hard. "Was he targeting me?" Monroe met her gaze. "We believe you were a distraction. He used the commotion on the flight to pass something through security." Danielle's blood ran cold. "So I walked into a setup." Monroe nodded. "And thanks to your calm response, it didn't." "Go the way they wanted." Danielle let out a slow breath. "What now?" Agent Monroe pulled out her phone and showed her a live feed of Twitter. "Stand with Danielle, seat for a soldier. Justice at 38,000 feet. You're trending worldwide," she said. "You've got support from senators, generals, celebrities. Even the First Lady just followed you." Danielle blinked. "I didn't ask for this." "I know. But you have it." Another knock at the door. A uniformed officer entered with a tablet in hand. "Ma'am," he said, addressing Monroe, "we have a situation. Gate C-12. Another flight was just grounded. Same airline. Another soldier, this time a Marine, denied boarding after showing a valid ticket." Danielle shot to her feet. "Is he okay?" The officer hesitated. "He's missing." Monroe stood. "Get security footage. Lock down terminals B through D and alert airport command. Now." The officer ran out. Monroe turned to Danielle. "I need your help." Danielle narrowed her eyes. "What kind of help?" "The kind only someone with combat instincts and public attention can give. You've become a symbol. And someone out there is using racism and confusion to hide something worse. We think it's a coordinated effort, and you may have just pulled the cover off it." Danielle grabbed her duffel bag and slung it over her shoulder. "Then let's find out what they're really trying to hide." As they walked briskly down the corridor, Monroe pulled up a map of the airport. "They're targeting military personnel. It's not random, and they're using airline staff to do it. We've already flagged 3 more employees with suspicious credentials, all hired in the last 2 weeks." Danielle glanced around as they passed a row of food kiosks. Her instincts were buzzing. "Something's about to go down," she said, and just as they turned the corner toward Gate C-12, a loud explosion shook the terminal, screams echoed, alarms blared, people ran in every direction, smoke billowed from somewhere near baggage claim. Monroe shoved Danielle down behind a row of chairs. "Stay low!" Danielle ducked but peeked through the chaos. She saw a figure in a vest sprinting through the smoke, heading for the maintenance stairwell. She locked eyes with Monroe. "I'm going after him." Monroe reached for her arm. "You're not armed." Danielle didn't stop. She sprinted through the chaos, weaving past terrified travelers, hurdling over knocked-over strollers and scattered luggage. Her training kicked in. She was no longer Sergeant Rivers on a commercial flight. She was a soldier chasing a target through the belly of a war zone. The man reached the stairwell and slammed the door behind him. Danielle threw her body into it. The door burst open, and the stairwell echoed with footsteps. She raced down the stairs 2 steps at a time, and just as she rounded the next landing, the man turned around. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone from her past, and he was holding a detonator. Danielle froze. Everything, the noise, the alarms, the chaos, faded for a moment. Her eyes locked onto his. Same square jaw, same scar running beneath the left eye, same combat boots, though scuffed and dirtier now. The last time she had seen him was years ago, on the battlefield in Kandahar, and now here he was, standing in a dimly lit stairwell beneath a civilian airport, holding a detonator. "Marcus," she breathed, disbelief cracking her voice. He smirked. Not with warmth, with bitterness, with something darker. "Didn't think I'd see you again, Dee." Danielle's fists clenched. "What are you doing here? What is this?" He didn't lower the detonator. "Just finishing what we started." "What we started?" she spat. "We didn't start this." He shrugged. "Didn't we? We served a country that turned its back on us. You just kept playing the game. I stopped pretending." Danielle took a step forward. "You're holding a detonator, Marcus. People could have died." "They already are," he snapped. "Every day, quietly. In prisons, in bad hospitals, in neighborhoods no one talks about. But nobody listens unless something blows up." Danielle stared at him. This wasn't just a man with a weapon. This was a soldier broken beyond repair. Somewhere along the way, his wounds had turned into poison. "I listened," she said gently. "You could have come to me. You were my friend." Marcus looked down, the detonator shaking slightly in his grip. "They made you the hero," he muttered. "Gave you medals, speeches, seats in first class, and I was discharged and discarded." "You were discharged after you shot a civilian," Danielle snapped. He flinched. "She had a bomb," he said quietly. "She had groceries," she corrected. The silence between them felt louder than the alarms. Danielle took another step. "I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed. But this isn't justice, Marcus. This is revenge. This is fear. And the man I served with was brave, not cruel." He looked up again, something shifting in his expression. Pain. Conflict. Then a voice buzzed through Danielle's earpiece. "Agent Munro. Sergeant, stand down. Backup is inbound. Do not engage." She touched the mic, but didn't respond. Marcus heard the voice too. "They're watching you? They think you're going to hurt people." He laughed bitterly. "They think I already did." "Did you?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he raised the detonator a little higher, but didn't press it. "Marcus, look at me," Danielle said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm not scared of you. I'm scared for you. You should be," he whispered. A beat of silence. Then suddenly, he turned and bolted up the stairs. "Marcus!" Danielle shouted and ran after him. She chased him up flight after flight, her boots echoing through the stairwell. He burst through a maintenance door and out onto the roof of the terminal. The cold air slapped her face as she followed. They were above everything now. The whole airport stretched out below them. Runways, terminals, blink. In towers, chaos still unfolding far in the distance. Marcus stopped at the edge of the roof, the detonator still in his hand. A duffel bag lay at his feet. Danielle slowed. "What's in the bag?" she asked, her chest heaving. "Evidence," he said. "Names, photos, plans, of the ones behind this." "Behind what?" He knelt and unzipped it, just slightly. Enough for her to see documents. IDs, hard drives, even a badge from the same airline she had flown on. "This wasn't just me," he said. "It's a network. They're planting people in security, airlines, logistics. The flight attendant you argued with? He's one of them. I tried to stop him, but I needed a distraction. That's why I provoked what happened on your flight." Danielle's blood ran cold. "You used me." "I trusted you to react with integrity," he said. "You did." She wanted to scream. Instead, she stepped closer. "We can expose them the right way. Hand that over. Come in with me." "I don't trust them," he said. "I barely trust you." He took one step backward. His heel was at the very edge of the rooftop. "I'm tired, Dee," he said softly. "I've been fighting the wrong war for too long." Danielle's heart pounded. "You don't have to fall to win," she said. "You don't have to die to be heard." He looked down at the detonator. "Maybe, but I don't have another move." Danielle saw it, the slight tremble in his fingers. "I do," she said, and in one sudden, calculated move, she threw her bag across the rooftop. It hit his arm just enough to knock the detonator from his grip. It clattered across the concrete. Marcus lunged for it, but she was faster. She tackled him to the ground. The bag spilled open, scattering documents everywhere. Photos of soldiers, logs of flights, suspicious shipments. The truth. Marcus didn't fight her. He just lay there, exhausted. Sirens echoed from below. Monroe's voice came back to her through her earpiece. "We see you. SWAT inbound. Stand by." Danielle looked down at Marcus. "It's over." He nodded. But then, from the corner of her eye, movement. Someone was on the next rooftop. A figure in black, watching, then gone. Danielle stood quickly. "They're still out there." The war hadn't ended. It had just changed. The rooftop swarmed with agents. Monroe arrived first, her suit flapping in the wind, flanked by tactical officers in full gear. Danielle had Marcus handcuffed and kneeling near the duffel bag. The detonator lay beside him, untouched. "He didn't press it," Danielle told Monroe, her voice low. Monroe nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "He wasn't supposed to. He was a decoy." Danielle tensed. "I saw someone, another operative, on the roof across from here." "We're already pulling the security feed," Monroe replied. "But they were probably watching us, timing the response, measuring how fast we move." Danielle crouched by the duffel bag and sifted through the documents, carefully lifting out hard drives and IDs. Each item had been sorted into labeled plastic bags inside the duffel, catalogued like evidence. Marcus had come prepared, not just for destruction, but for exposure. "These names," Danielle said, holding up a page. "I recognize 3, all involved in defense logistics. One of them worked the Fort Knox manifest shift 2 years ago when munitions went missing." Monroe raised a brow. "And now they're working airport security?" Danielle nodded grimly. "It's not just a racism scandal, it's infiltration. They're using discrimination as a smokescreen." She turned to Marcus, who had lowered his head, silent. Monroe pulled her phone and spoke rapidly into it. "We need to cross-reference all TSA and airline hires within the last 6 months against the names in this bag. Flag everyone. Coordinate with military intel and DHS." Danielle stood and walked slowly toward the edge of the roof, peering down toward the crowd of evacuees being gathered below. Her eyes scanned the movement, looking for anyone that didn't fit. Her earpiece crackled. A new voice came through, deeper, unfamiliar. "This is command. Sergeant Rivers, you are to return to HQ immediately. Debrief begins in 30 minutes. Transport en route." Danielle didn't reply. Monroe stepped up beside her. "They're pulling you in. You're too visible now. You've become the story." Danielle turned. "That's exactly why I need to stay out here." "Public attention makes you a target," Monroe warned. "Or a shield," Danielle countered. "People are watching now. That gives us leverage." Monroe studied her, then slowly nodded. "You've got 24 hours before they sideline you." Danielle glanced over at Marcus, who was being led away in cuffs surrounded by agents. As they moved to the stairwell, Marcus turned his head. For a brief moment, their eyes met again. He mouthed a single word. "Sorry." Danielle didn't reply, because she wasn't sure what he was sorry for, failing the country, or dragging her into the fallout. Back at the airport's makeshift command center, Danielle sat in front of a wall of monitors. Footage of the explosion near the baggage claim played on a loop. The bomb had been small, intended more as a distraction than real harm. But the precision was clear. It had gone off just as airport security had started to surround Marcus. "Someone knew our response time," Monroe said, arms crossed. "They knew our protocol. This wasn't just inside help. It was orchestrated." Danielle tapped a monitor showing a woman at gate D14. She had a fake TSA badge, was seen guiding 2 uniformed soldiers away from their flight, then disappeared from the cameras. "Who is she?" Danielle asked. "No idea. She's not in the TSA database. She's not on the watch list either, not even in civilian facial recognition." Danielle frowned. "Then she doesn't exist." "Exactly." Monroe sighed and looked at the glass board beside them. Dozens of photos and sticky notes were now pinned under the heading, "Operation Ghost Seat." Danielle read the names out loud. "Flight 287, me, Flight 122, Marine Corporal denied boarding. Went missing. Flight 093, Army Intel officer bumped from flight. Luggage stolen." Monroe added, "And all 3 flights? Same airline, same general route. East Coast to D.C. Danielle's fingers tapped the table. "Someone is trying to disrupt movement of military personnel, high-value ones. Or intercept them, Monroe said. Use the chaos to replace them mid-transit. Danielle's eyes widened. Body doubles? Worse. Frame jobs. She pulled up a report showing a soldier arrested in Atlanta 2 weeks ago, accused of smuggling encrypted drives onto a domestic flight. The footage showed someone in his uniform boarding, but it wasn't him. He had already been intercepted earlier and replaced. Danielle stood abruptly. They're staging crimes using lookalikes to discredit military officers. The public loses trust. The system starts to crack. Monroe's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and swore under her breath. You're going to want to see this. She turned the screen toward Danielle. It was a news alert. Breaking. Anonymous. Source leaks. Audio recording of airport incident involving black female soldier. Public outrage erupts. Danielle leaned in and tapped play. Her voice came through the speaker. The recording had captured the entire confrontation with the flight attendant, from the denial to the moment she took the intercom and addressed the passengers. Then a new voice cut in. Someone had edited in a threatening line she never said, "This country owes me, and I will take what's mine, even if I have to burn it all down." Danielle stared at the screen. That's not real. Monroe's face was stone. They just turned you into the villain. Danielle's mind spun. They weren't just removing soldiers. They were erasing reputations, rewriting narratives, painting heroes as threats, and now she was their next canvas. That night, Danielle left the airport under disguise. The agency provided her with a nondescript car, civilian clothes, and an encrypted phone. She was told to go dark, but she had no intention of disappearing. She drove out past the city, into the wooded outskirts where cell towers grew sparse and roads got narrow. At a remote cabin used for special ops training retreats, she met an old friend, retired Master Sergeant Tyrell Hodge. He was a ghost, off the grid since retirement, brilliant, paranoid, and a digital bloodhound. "You said it was urgent," he grumbled, pouring bourbon into a mug. "So I didn't ask questions." Danielle placed the hard drives from Marcus's bag on his table. "Can you break them?" Hodge narrowed his eyes. "Break 'em? Girl, I can make 'em sing." He plugged in the first drive. Lines of encrypted code filled the screen. Danielle leaned in. "They're rewriting soldiers' records, uploading false charges, planting synthetic footage." Tyrrell's fingers flew across the keyboard. "They're not just building false identities," he muttered. "They're creating ghosts, untraceable digital soldiers that don't exist until they're needed." Danielle stiffened. "And they've already used them." She reached into her bag and pulled out the photo of the woman from gate D14. "She's one of them. I need to find her." Tyrell looked up at her, his expression serious for the first time all night. "Whoever's behind this, if they're building false soldiers, planting bombs and hijacking records, this ain't just a rogue cell." He turned the monitor toward her. "This is a war." Danielle stared at the flickering screen. The deeper she dug, the bigger the enemy became, and just as she reached to power off the screen for the night, a laser dot flickered across the wall behind her. Tyrell saw it too. "Down!" he shouted. Glass shattered as a silenced. Round tore through the window. The gunshot tore through the air like a lightning bolt. Danielle dove behind the heavy oak table, dragging Tyrell with her just as a second shot splintered the wood beside them. The hard drive skidded across the floor, and sparks flew from the nearby computer tower as it was hit. "They found us," Danielle hissed. "No kidding," Tyrell barked, fumbling for a drawer and pulling out a rusty-looking shotgun. "How the hell did they track this place? This spot's not even on Google Earth." Danielle didn't answer. Her mind raced. The laser dot, the silencer, the precision. This wasn't just a warning. They wanted her dead. "They must have followed the drives," she muttered. "Encrypted beacon. Marcus didn't even know." Tyrell cocked the shotgun and peered over the table. "Two of them, one in the trees, the others moving around the side." "Cover me," Danielle ordered. "Cover you with what? This thing hasn't been cleaned since Obama." She didn't wait. Grabbing the duffel bag, Danielle rolled across the floor and slid behind a second table just as another shot punched through the window. She grabbed a metal flashlight and hurled it at the lights, plunging the cabin into near darkness. Tyrell fired a shot out the broken window, loud, messy, and far from accurate, but it made the attackers scatter. Danielle took the chance and bolted out the back door into the freezing night. The forest swallowed her immediately. Branches clawed at her arms as she moved between trees, trying to gain high ground. She knew she had maybe 60 seconds before they realized she was outside. Then she saw him, a silhouette just ahead, moving slowly, cautiously. She crept behind a tree and waited. As he stepped closer, she pounced, silent, swift, brutal. She took him down with a knee to the back and yanked his weapon away. He fought back, trained, strong, but she was stronger. She elbowed him in the jaw, pinned him to the forest floor and pressed to the barrel of his own rifle against his temple. "Who sent you?" she growled. He just grinned, blood in his teeth. "You already know." She tightened her grip. "What's Operation Ghost Seat really about?" the man spat. "Replacing your best and killing the rest." Before she could press further, a click behind her made her freeze. Another one. She turned her head slowly. The second attacker was there, gun raised, but before he could fire, boom! A shotgun blast erupted behind him. Tyrell. The man collapsed, motionless. Danielle stood panting and turned back to the first attacker, but he was gone. Vanished into the woods like a shadow. They searched the area but found nothing. No prints, no trail, just the cold and silence. Back inside, the cabin was in ruins. The hard drives were intact, but barely. One was cracked. Tyrell carefully connected it to a secondary system, bypassing the fried tower. "We have to move," he muttered. "They'll be back with more, and next time they won't miss." Danielle grabbed a coat and began packing. "Where's the next safe house?" Tyrell hesitated. "No more safe houses. Not after this. We need to go public." Danielle spun. "We can't. Not until we have solid proof, data, testimony, names. Otherwise they'll twist it again, make us look like traitors." He paused, then nodded. "Then we need Marcus." Danielle looked at him sharply. "He's in federal lockup." "Yeah, and he's the only one who knows the full network, the names, the structure. You want to stop this? You're going to have to break him out." Danielle blinked. "That's not what I do." "It is now." They moved fast, ditching the cabin, using back roads and burner phones. Tyrell tapped into surveillance networks from an old laptop in the trunk of a car. Danielle watched the news reports as they spiraled. Breaking. Leaked footage. Suggests rogue soldier orchestrated a airport bomb threat. Her photo was everywhere. Cropped, distorted, weaponized. Someone was feeding the media a new narrative, and she was the villain. Her phone buzzed with a restricted call. She answered. A voice came through. Female, sharp, cold. "You should have stayed in your seat, Sergeant." Click. The line went dead. Danielle lowered the phone slowly. "They're daring me to fight back," she whispered. Tyrell glanced over from the passenger seat. "Then it's time to fight smarter." That night they arrived at a safe spot near the detention facility holding Marcus. It was a former military base repurposed into a black site, a place meant for silence. No media, no lawyers, no names. Danielle knew the risks. If she went in, there might not be a way out. But she also knew one thing. If they wanted to erase her story, the only way to survive was to tell a better one. With proof, with truth, with fire. The plan was simple. Distract the guards. Get into the lower holding cells. Find Marcus. Extract information. Get out. Nothing ever went to plan. Danielle entered the facility disguised as a federal agent, using Tyrell's forged credentials and deep back-channel clearance. She had 15 minutes before someone noticed the badge didn't match the face. She moved fast through the sterile halls, ignoring the suspicious glances. Down one corridor, past a locked gate, then another, and then she saw him. Marcus, in a reinforced cell with glass walls, handcuffed and staring at the floor. Danielle approached slowly. He looked up and blinked in shock. "What? How did you—" "No time," she said. "I need names, data. The woman at gate D14. Who is she?" Marcus hesitated. "Her name's not real," he said. "But she's called Sable, ex-SOCOM. Went ghost 5 years ago. She's their recruiter. And she doesn't miss. Where is she now?" "Next flight. Tomorrow. Airborne insertion." What's the target? He shook his head. I don't know, but if she's moving this fast, it's big. Danielle reached for the panel on his door. Just then, a siren blared. Security. Override. They'd been found. Marcus's door locked tighter. Steel bars slid into place. Danielle spun just as guards came down the hallway, guns drawn. On the ground! Someone yelled. Tyrell's voice crackled through her earpiece. They scrambled facial ID. They know who you are. You've got 60 seconds. Danielle raised her hands slowly. Looked Marcus in the eyes. Give me the files. They're in your head. Code word. Far side, he whispered. Unlocks everything on the drives. Then he shouted, Now! Danielle turned, dropped a smoke pellet from her belt, and vanished into the fog as bullets peppered the glass. Tyrell had the car running. She dove into the passenger seat, coughing from the smoke. Did you get it? He asked. She nodded. Code word. Far side. And as they tore into the night, sirens fading behind them, Danielle realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was going to war. They didn't sleep. By dawn, Danielle and Tyrell were holed up in an abandoned mechanics garage outside D.C. It smelled like grease and moldy tires, but it was quiet, shielded, and off-grid. Tyrell connected the semi-damaged hard drives to a patched-up rig he had rebuilt overnight using spare laptop parts, wires, and what looked suspiciously like a microwave component. The words Operation Farside flashed across the screen. Then the screen blinked, and a menu appeared. Encrypted personnel files, synthetic video archive, communications logs, deployment schedule. Phase 2. Danielle leaned forward, heart pounding. Phase 2, she whispered. They're just getting started. Tyrell's eyes darted across the screen. These files, they're building a second chain of command, fake service members, false records, and they're set to embed across multiple branches. Navy, Air Force, cyber units. It's infiltration at scale. Danielle opened the synthetic video archive. Her stomach turned. There were hundreds, no thousands of deepfake videos. Soldiers confessing to war crimes, leaked calls to foreign agents, all fake, all disturbingly real-looking. And then she found one of herself. It was recent. In the video, she stood at a podium wearing her full dress uniform, addressing what looked like a crowd of angry civilians. But the words she was saying? I no longer fight for this country. I fight for control. Danielle clicked pause, breath shaky. Tyrell grimaced. This stuff's already being queued for leak. They're preparing to discredit military leadership, one by one. Danielle stood and paced. It's not just about erasing us. It's about replacing us. People won't know who to believe. Distrust spreads, and when nobody believes anything... Tyrell finished the thought. The ones pulling the strings get to decide the truth. She looked back at the deployment schedule. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Tyrell tapped the screen. They're activating agents at major transit points. Atlanta, Chicago, Seattle, D.C. Gate D14, Danielle muttered. Tyrell blinked. What? That woman. Sable. She was at Gate D14. Marcus said she's ex-SOCOM. She's moving tonight. Danielle turned to him. We have to intercept her. You sure it's not a trap? I'm counting on it. Later that evening, Danielle walked through Ronald Reagan National Airport with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, dressed like any other traveler. She wore a black hoodie, sunglasses, and a ball cap pulled low. Her uniform was gone. Her name, too. But inside, the soldier hadn't gone anywhere. Tyrell fed her live camera feeds through a disguised phone earpiece. I've got eyes on Gate D14, no sign of Sable yet. But 2 suits near the coffee kiosk. They're scanning faces. Could be AI-enabled cams. Danielle casually adjusted her hat and changed direction. Let them scan. I'm not the one they're hunting right now. She blended with a group of tired commuters moving toward the security line. Around her, the airport buzzed with the usual noise, families reuniting, kids crying, intercoms echoing flight changes. But under that surface was a quiet, humming tension. She could feel it, like wires drawn tight beneath every smile. East hallway, bathroom corridor, Tyrell said suddenly. "She's there. Black coat, braid, no luggage, that's her." Danielle turned without hesitation, cutting across toward the hallway. As she entered the quiet corridor, the sound of the main terminal dropped behind her. Sable stood at the far end, just as Marcus had described, tall, calm, eyes sharp. She was looking at her reflection in the metal paper towel dispenser, adjusting her jacket. Danielle approached slowly. Sable spoke first. "I was wondering how long it'd take you to find me." Danielle kept her voice even. "You've made yourself hard to miss." "You should have taken the story they gave you," Sable said, still not turning around. "It was a good one. You were the wronged soldier, the public's broken hero. You could have owned the narrative. And let you burn the real one," Danielle replied. "Not a chance." Sable finally turned, her expression unreadable. "You think this country cares about heroes. They want control. And the moment you stop fitting their idea of patriot, you're an enemy." "People don't get to rewrite my truth," Danielle said, "or any soldiers." Sable nodded slowly. "Then I guess you've chosen a side." From her coat she pulled out a small device and clicked it once. Danielle's earpiece sparked and went silent. Tyrell was gone. Comms jammed. Before she could react, Sable charged. Danielle braced, but the strike was brutal, years of elite training behind it. The first blow caught her in the ribs, knocking her sideways into the bathroom door. Danielle ducked the second and countered with a knee to Sable's thigh, then a punch to her stomach. They grappled, twisting into the bathroom. Tiles shattered as Sabi. Lee slammed Danielle into the sink. The mirror cracked. Blood smeared across porcelain. "I'm not here to kill you," Sable said, panting. "I'm here to end your myth. When they find you here, injured, broken, a terrorist who failed again, they'll believe it." Danielle pushed off the sink, spitting blood. "I don't care what they believe anymore." With a roar, she tackled Sable into a stall, breaking the door off its hinges. The two women crashed to the floor. Sable reached for her side, but Danielle was faster. She disarmed her, kicked the weapon away, and pinned her arm with her knee. But Sable grinned. "You're too late," she hissed. "Phase 2 starts in 4 hours. Danielle's hand clenched. "Not if I stop it now." A security guard entered the hallway just then, drawn by the noise. Danielle didn't hesitate. She lifted Sable, slammed her against the stall door, and growled, "We're going for a walk." Dragging her into the hall, she saw the guard freeze. Danielle flashed the fake badge Tyrell had rigged. "Military detainment," she barked. "No questions, no delays." And somehow, it worked. Within 10 minutes, Danielle had Sable bound, gagged, and shoved into the back of a nondescript vehicle Tyrell had hotwired by the loading zone. The second they hit the freeway, Tyrell turned to her. "What happened?" "She's the key," Danielle said. "She knows where the Phase 2 drop sites are, and I have a feeling she's not the only one en route." Sable sat silently in the back seat, face bruised, eyes burning with quiet fury. Danielle leaned back. "We have 4 hours," Tyrell nodded. "And a war to stop." As the car sped down the dark highway toward a hidden facility where they could extract Sable's intel, Danielle knew the truth was almost out. But what came next would make everything so far look small, because Phase 2 wasn't just about replacing soldiers. It was about replacing the entire chain of command. The facility they drove to was Buer, right beneath a decommissioned mine shaft in Pennsylvania, one of Tyrell's old hideouts from back when he ran infiltration drills for Black Ops teams. The entrance was hidden behind a rusted-out truck and layers of steel fencing so overgrown with ivy it looked more like an abandoned treehouse than a command center. Inside, the air was cold and dry. The silence made every sound echo, their boots on concrete, the creak of the security gate, the faint hum of the portable generator Tyrell kicked on with a practiced heel. Danielle led Sable down the corridor, with her hands zip-tied and mouth duct-taped. The woman's eyes, however, spoke volumes, defiant, calculating, unbroken. "Strap her down," Danielle said. Tyrell hesitated. "You sure about this?" Danielle didn't answer. She just turned away and walked to the control center, where an old terminal hummed to life with data feeds blinking across its screens. Tyrell returned moments later. "She's secure." Danielle exhaled. "Good. Let's begin. They used a military-grade neural scanner, a prototype device Tyrell had salvaged from a DARPA testing site months earlier. It wasn't exactly legal, and it wasn't exactly gentle, but it worked. "We don't need everything," Tyrell muttered, adjusting the settings. "Just drop sites, coordination points, names." Danielle stared at the feed as it mapped Sable's cognitive pathways. Each pulse of light was a memory fragment bouncing against the interface. Most were encrypted, locked down tight with psychological walls trained into elite operatives, but not all of them. "There," Danielle pointed. "Pause on that." Tyrell zoomed in on a glowing section labeled TR-147, Phase 2, Logistics. A list of codes appeared, with cities, military base names, dates, and something else. Civilian locations, hospitals, schools, transit hubs. Danielle leaned in. "They're embedding everywhere. Not just command centers. They want to control infrastructure." Tyrell's voice dropped. "This is way bigger than any military op. They're trying to fracture the entire country." Danielle's blood ran cold. "We need to go public, right now." Tyrell frowned. "With what?" "The press won't touch this. The networks will bury it. Hell, Twitter's already flagged your name as misinformation. We need someone untouchable," she said. "Someone they can't silence." Tyrell blinked. "You mean someone in uniform?" Danielle turned to the screen again. "No," she said slowly. "Someone who used to be." An hour later, they were in contact with General Amanda Blake, retired, decorated, and famously unshakable in the face of corruption. Danielle had served under her briefly during a NATO peacekeeping mission years ago. They sent her a heavily encrypted packet with the name Operation Farside and waited. 6 minutes later, her reply came in one line. "Meet me in DC rooftop garage, Aero 200 hours. Come alone." Tyrell frowned. "Could be a trap." Danielle nodded. "Could also be our last shot." Before they left, she turned to Sable, still bound and now eerily quiet in the holding cell. Danielle stepped inside. "Tell me why you switched sides." Sable lifted her head. "Because I stopped believing the people I bled for would ever protect me." Danielle stared. "You think this helps anyone?" she asked. Sable smiled. "It helps the next version of you, to never question the system." Danielle left without another word. AM. The garage rooftop was nearly empty. Fog rolled over the asphalt. In the distance, the Capitol dome glowed under faint moonlight. Danielle stood in the center of the lot, hands raised, no weapons, no gear, just a flash drive in her pocket, and hope that General Blake hadn't been turned. Headlights flared. A black SUV pulled up. The door opened, and Blake stepped out, still tall, still steel-eyed. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun. Her coat was military pressed, even in retirement. She looked Danielle up and down. "You don't look like the terrorist they say you are." Danielle handed her the flash drive. "Everything's on here, proof, plans, deepfakes, testimonies. It's all real." Blake took the drive, inserted it into a tablet she brought, and scrolled in silence for nearly 2 minutes. Then she said quietly, "I always wondered what they'd try next. Never thought it'd be this." "Can you help me?" Danielle asked. "No," Blake said. Danielle's breath caught. Then Blake looked up. "But I can lead with you." Danielle blinked. "You're not the only one who saw this coming," Blake continued. "There are others. Retired officers, independent journalists, cyber forensics people. We've been watching the signs. We just didn't have the proof." She handed the tablet back. "Until now." Danielle swallowed hard. "They'll come for you too." "They already have," Blake said with a dry smile. "But I'm still standing." Behind her, the SUV's rear door opened again. Another figure stepped out. Danielle gasped. It was Marcus, unshackled, alive. Blake turned. He cut a deal. Immunity in exchange for everything he knows. Danielle looked from one to the other. "Then we have a chance." Blake nodded. "We do, but we'll have to move fast." Suddenly, boom, An explosion rocked the garage. Fire burst from the far stairwell. Screams echoed from below. The SUV's alarm began wailing. "Get down!" Blake shouted, drawing a sidearm. Danielle hit the ground, pulling Marcus with her as gunfire erupted from the adjacent rooftop. Silhouettes, masked, armored, descended on zip lines. The fog became smoke. It was an ambush. Danielle scrambled for cover behind a concrete pillar, heart pounding. Marcus pressed beside her, bleeding from the shoulder. "We've been compromised," he gasped. Danielle peeked out just as one of the attackers tossed a small black orb toward Blake. It hit the ground, blinked. The urn expanded. A pulse of light burst outward in every direction, flattening Blake, Danielle, Marcus, and everyone nearby. Danielle's vision went white, her ears rang, and then darkness. The last thing she heard before blacking out was Sable's voice crackling through a stolen comms channel. "Phase 3 is live." Pain hit first, a deep, throbbing ache behind Danielle's eyes, like someone had drilled through her skull and left the engine running. Her ears rang in dull pulses. The world came back in static, crackling, distorted, slow, concrete under her back. Smoke in the air, something warm trickling down her temple. Her eyes fluttered open to chaos. The rooftop garage was a war zone. The SUV lay flipped on its side, burning at the edges. Shattered glass glittered like ice across the floor. Sirens blared in the distance, but no first responders had arrived. This wasn't a rescue-friendly event. Danielle tried to sit up. Her ribs screamed. Across the lot she spotted Marcus, slumped against a pillar, his head hanging low but chest still rising. General Blake was nowhere in sight. Status check. Danielle muttered into the comm. Nothing. The EMP blast from the pulse grenade must have fried all their electronics. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. She rolled over, crawling toward Marcus. Each movement was a fight. "Come on. Hang in there." When she reached him, his eyes fluttered open. "You... alive?" he rasped. "Barely," she said, helping him up. "Blake?" Danielle looked toward the blown-out stairwell. "We find her." But before they could move, a voice echoed through a hidden speaker, cold and deliberate. "Soldier, we meet again." "Sable." Danielle turned. A nearby screen mounted to a half-burnt security console blinked to life. Static cleared, and Sable's face came into view. Calm, composed, seated in a dim room somewhere remote. "You're persistent," Sable said. "But this time there's no one left to shield you." Danielle grit her teeth. "Where is she?" "She's alive." "For now," Sable answered. "But the world won't remember her after." Tonight. Behind her, on the screen, another figure stepped into view. Danielle froze. It was her, but not her, the deep fake version, wearing her uniform, standing at a podium, preparing to deliver a live broadcast. "She's about to denounce the government, on every major network, in 10 minutes, Sable said. "And the world will watch it unfold, thinking it's you." Danielle's heart dropped. "You're using my face to start a war." "Correction," Sable said smoothly. "To justify one." The screen blinked out. Danielle turned to Marcus. "If that video goes out..." "I'm finished. The military fractures. Trust collapses." Marcus pushed himself to his feet. "Then we stop it. Now." With the comms fried and backup compromised, they had only one chance: reach the core uplink tower across the Potomac. That's where Sable's team was spoofing the video feed, directly injecting it into national airwaves. Tyrell had mentioned it once. A covert uplink hub disguised as an abandoned broadcast relay station. It was less than 6 miles away, but they had minutes. Danielle hot-wired an airport baggage truck left at the bottom of the garage and shoved Marcus into the passenger seat. Sparks flew from the engine, but it roared to life. They tore down the access ramp and burst into the empty streets of D.C., dodging burning debris and checkpoint barricades. The city felt frozen, too still, too quiet. As they raced across the Memorial Bridge, Danielle saw drones circling overhead, scanning for heat signatures. Marcus pointed. "Uplink tower's there." A thin, needle-like structure loomed above a patch of trees barely lit. Power lines hummed around it. A single satellite dish glowed faint blue. They ditched the truck and sprinted the rest of the way on foot. At the gate, 2 black-suited guards raised rifles. But Marcus fired first. 2 clean shots, both down. Danielle rushed. In heart-hammering. Inside, screens showed the countdown timer. Live feed initiating in 4:38. She saw her face on the screen. Fake her was mid-speech, words being typed into her mouth in real time. A technician turned. "Hey, you're not supposed to—" Danielle tackled him into a panel. Marcus started pulling wires. "Kill the uplink!" Danielle shouted. But as she reached for the control unit, a sharp sound rang out. Crack! She staggered backward, pain searing through her shoulder. A sniper. Marcus ducked, dragging her down behind a steel cabinet. "You're hit," he hissed. Danielle gritted her teeth. "Doesn't matter, cover me." She limped to the console, blood dripping from her jacket, and typed commands into the root system. The console flashed red. Critical access required. Admin biometrics. Her hand trembled. "They need my face," she whispered. Marcus turned to her, eyes wide. "You can use it." Danielle looked up. "What?" Marcus pulled out a scanner and held it toward her. "Let it verify you. If it sees you're the real Danielle, it might override the feed." She leaned into the scanner. It blinked once, twice. Match found. Authorized user. The screen changed. An option appeared. Override all feeds. YN. She slammed the key. The screen went black. Across the country, every live feed cut to static. And the fake Danielle. Erased. Danielle fell to her knees, breathing hard. "We did it," Marcus whispered. But their relief lasted only seconds. Because just outside the door, more black-clad operatives arrived, heavily armed, faceless behind their helmets. Sable had sent in her final wave. Marcus raised his pistol. Danielle grabbed a metal rod. They stood side by side, wounded, bleeding, exhausted, but unbroken. Danielle looked at him and said, "If this is our last stand, we make it count." And then the doors blew inward. The blast ripped the door off its hinges. Smoke swallowed the room as masked operatives poured in, rifles raised, boots pounding. Danny, Kelly and Marcus didn't wait. They launched forward, Danielle swinging the steel rod like a soldier possessed, Marcus covering her flank with pinpoint shots that dropped the first 2 men through the breach. But the others came fast, too fast. Danielle lunged for cover as rounds shattered monitors and sparks rained down from the ceiling. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, yanked the pin, and hurled it into the fog. It exploded in a cloud of white, buying them seconds. They ran. Out a back door, down a maintenance tunnel. Alarms blared overhead. Danielle clutched her bleeding shoulder. She was running on adrenaline now, her vision blurred, her breath ragged. Behind them, the operatives gave chase. "We need extraction," Marcus shouted into a burner radio. "Anyone on frequency? We're under fire at Tower 9. Static, then a voice. "This is Blake. ETA 60 seconds. Hold your ground." Danielle blinked. "She's alive?" Marcus grinned. "She's not the type to go down easy." They emerged into a loading dock and barricaded the steel door behind them. Danielle braced herself against a wall, watching the seconds tick by on her cracked watch. Every inch of her body hurt, but she wasn't done. Not yet. 60 seconds felt like 60 years, but just as the door behind them began to buckle, metal groaning, bolts popping, a roar filled the air. A black helicopter appeared above the compound, searchlights blazing. It hovered above the rooftop. General Amanda Blake leaned out, rifle in hand, her coat whipping in the wind. "Move!" she shouted. Danielle and Marcus scrambled up the emergency ladder as bullets pinged off the rungs below. Blake laid down cover fire, hitting 3 men before they reached the roof. A soldier in the chopper reached down, grabbed Danielle by the arm, and pulled her aboard. Marcus followed, just as a rocket exploded against the far wall. The chopper banked hard and rose into the sky. Blake turned to Danielle, breathing hard. "You shut down the feed?" Danielle nodded. "Every channel, every fake." Blake gave a tight smile. "Good. Then it's time to tell them the truth." 3 days later, Danielle sat in a small room in a secure underground facility, facing a panel of intelligence officials, lawmakers, and senior military advisors. Her uniform was torn. Her arm was in a sling, but she looked every one of them in the eye. She told them everything: the infiltration, the framing, the fake broadcast. Operation Far Side. The room was silent for a long time. Then one of the senators leaned forward. "Do you have proof of all this?" Danielle reached into her jacket. She placed a small, cracked flash drive on the table. Every second, every file, every plan. Blake stepped forward behind her. "This woman risked her life to save this country from itself. You better listen." Another long pause. Then, applause. It started slow, just 1 or 2 claps. But it grew. By the end of the day, Danielle's name was cleared. Her image restored. But more importantly, the truth went public. News stations ran the real story. The fake broadcast was exposed. Sable's operatives scattered, many arrested. Those still hiding knew one thing: the soldier they tried to erase had just become the face of the resistance. Weeks later, Danielle stood in uniform again, this time at a real podium. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. She took a breath. "This isn't about me," she said. "This is about what happens when power is left unchecked, when lies go unchallenged, when a system thinks it can rewrite who you are." She looked out across the crowd. "To every black soldier who's ever been doubted, to every woman who's been told to sit down, to everyone who's ever had a seat taken from them, know this." She smiled. "They might try to deny you, but they can't stop you." Behind her, the crowd erupted, and somewhere far away, in a hidden room with flickering monitors, Sable watched, expression blank, voice quiet. "Phase 4, she whispered to herself. "Soon." But for now, Danielle had won, and the country, at least for a while, had opened its eyes. Danielle's journey started with a simple injustice, being denied a seat she had rightfully earned. But it revealed something far deeper, a system laced with bias, manipulation, and silent battles fought far from public view. Her fight became more than about one woman or one flight. It became a reckoning. She rose from betrayal, hunted by those sworn to protect, framed by a machine designed to silence her, and still stood tall, bleeding, yes, but unbroken. In the end, her courage sparked a wave of truth that forced an entire nation to pause, to question, to remember what honor really means. And though the shadows that threatened her still lurk, and though new battles may come, Danielle proved one unshakable truth. A single voice, when backed by truth and bravery, can disrupt an entire system. She may have been denied her seat, but she took her place in history. And now, others will follow.